Our scripture is 2 Timothy 4 verse 2, which says, "Preach the word, be instant, in season, and out of season." And we're really going to be looking at be instant, in season, and out of season. What does this mean? Well, at the time that the Apostle Paul wrote this, Timothy was serving as the leading elder or the pastor in the city of Ephesus. And in this city of Ephesus, a tremendous persecution was taking place. For the first couple years that Timothy was there, everything was swell, the church was growing, and then Nero came to power. And under the rule of Nero, there was a horrific persecution against the church. And when the persecution began, believers began to die in the great stadium of Ephesus. Many of them were killed in the theater of Ephesus. Many believers were killed in the big commercial market right in the very heart of Ephesus. It was a horrific time for believers. And many people began to leave the Lord. They were afraid that if they remained faithful, they would lose their lives. And the order of the government was that every Christian was to burn incense to the gods to prove that they were not a Christian. And so a lot of Christians, in order to save their lives, were being dragged into pagan temples, and they were being forced to burn incense to pagan gods. And if they would do that, just do that very simple act, it would save their life. And there was great pressure on the church, and many people were compromising. Previous to this moment, Timothy's ministry had been great. It had been a good time. But now it was really a bad time. And the pressure was really on Timothy because he was the most visible leader in the whole city. And if that kind of persecution was happening against regular church members, just imagine what the Roman government would have done if they had gotten their hands on Timothy. They would have made his death excruciating in order to scare all the other believers. And Timothy knew that. And when he first wrote his letter to Paul, we know that he had a spirit of fear, because when Paul answered him in 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7, he said, "Hey, Timothy, God's not given you a spirit of fear." And now when you come to chapter 4, he concludes the text by saying, "Preach the word." This is not a time for you to stop. This is a time for you to preach. And then he says these words, "Be instant, in season, and out of season." That word, "be instant," is a compound of two Greek words. The first word is the word epi, which means upon. And the second word is the word istene, which means to stand. But when you compound the two words together, it means to stay in your place, to stay on your place. And in fact, it was a military term which meant stay at your post. Stay at your post. So we know that Timothy had a temptation to abandon his post, maybe even to save his own life. You know, it's amazing what a spirit of fear will do to you. When a spirit of fear tries to come on you, you become irrational in many ways. Your imagination takes over. And sometimes you just need someone to speak a strong word to you and tell you what to do. And Paul said to Timothy, you stay at your post. It is your post. You cannot leave it. You cannot give it to another. Your job is to stay there and to preach the word. Stay at your post. Then he says, in season and out of season. The Greek says, eukairos, akairos. The word kairos is the word for times, but you can change that word by adding a different beginning to it. For instance, if you say eukairos, the word you describes something that's wonderful or something that's swell. So eukairos means good times. These are good times. Well, it's always fun to preach the word when it's eukairos, when it's good times. When you feel like all the favor is on your side and people are eating out of the palm of your hand and the church is growing and things have never been better, that's a fun time to preach the word. It's always fun to stay at your post when everything's in your favor. But he said you need to stay at your post also out of season, the word akairos, which means bad times, when things are not going in your direction.